Thank you all for joining us here at I-80 Sports, where today it is our final division preview for the upcoming 2024-2025 season. And today, it's the Metropolitan Division. Guys, thank you all for joining us here again at I-80 Sports. Thank you all for joining us here at I-80 Sports. Make sure you subscribe down below, youtube.com/NHL on I-80 Sports. We're going to be hitting you guys with some regular season content starting next week. So you don't want to miss it. Make sure you hit the bell notification so that way you know when our content goes live. And so that way you can catch up with all of the news and notes around the NHL throughout the NHL season. Comment down below with who you think are the teams to beat in the Metropolitan Division this year and who's looking worse on paper as well. While you're there, drop a like as well. And if you follow us on Twitter, thank you guys. But if you don't, make sure you follow us down below at I80_sports NHL. And like I said, if you follow us and you're subscribed to us already, thank you guys so much because we greatly value all of your support. I'm Brian. He's Tom. Tom, how are you doing today?
Doing well. And here we are. This is our last preview of the year. This is the Metropolitan Division preview, the one we always wait to do last. So it's going to be, I hate to say it might be the weakest division in the league this year. As crazy as it sounds, it might very well come out as the weakest division in the league this year. As crazy as that sounds, because it's been fairly strong over the past few.
Yeah, this division's looking a little top-heavy this year, to say the least. But before we dive into this preview, we wanted to wait until this specific preview to address this. And it feels a little bit weird finally addressing it now, but we wanted to make it relevant to the actual video itself. On August 29th of this year, Johnny and Matthew Johnny Gaudreau, who played for the Columbus Blue Jackets, tragically lost their lives in a drunk driving accident, not of their own volition, but of another person who was drunk behind the wheel and unfortunately hit both Johnny and Matthew while they were riding their bikes in New Jersey the day before their sister's wedding. And this is to offer sincerest condolences to the Gaudreau family for such a difficult time and all the difficulties that they've been overcoming in the over a month wake of that. But to also just put the PSA out there to those of you maybe out there that are listening that currently need help. There are, support systems out there. There's AA. Please, seek out these wonderful programs that can help all citizens in America to get clean, get sober, because it's important and it saves lives. But I just wanted to make that mention right now. We'll touch upon Columbus today, but it is going to be tough to kind of like talk about where they are this season, given the circumstance. So understand why we might gloss over certain aspects of the Columbus Blue Jackets this year. So to keep going on with this additions and subtractions, I'm also not going to obviously add Johnny Gaudreau as a subtraction. That would be a little bit inhumane. That's dark. That's not okay. So let's dive into this. The additions and subtractions throughout the Metropolitan Division, starting with the Carolina Hurricanes. Key additions here in Sean Walker, Shane Gostisbehere, Jack Roslovic, William Carrier, and Tyson Jost, with key subtractions in Jake Gensel, Brady Shea, Brett Pesce, Teuvo Teravainen, and Evgeny Kuznetsov, and Stefan Nason, as well as Antti Raanta as well, who retired during this past offseason. The Columbus Blue Jackets, some key additions here: Sean Monahan, Jordan Harris, Jack Johnson, and Dylan Gambrell, with key subtractions in Patrick Laine, Alexander Tessier, Adam Boqvist, Jake Bean, and Alex Nylander. To my New Jersey Devils, some key additions here: Jacob Markstrom, Brett Pesce, Brendan Dillon, Stefan Nason, Tomas Tatar, Paul Cotter, and Jonathan Kovacevic. Key subtractions here: John Marino, Kevin Ball, Alexander Holtz, Brendan Smith, Tomas Nosek, Akira Schmid, Chris Tierney, and Graham Clark. To the New York Islanders, key additions here: Marcus Hogberg, Maxim Siplikov, I think it is. I
No,
think
you
it's
said it right. You said it right.
Siplikov. I can say that right, but I can't say other names right. Love it. Uh, and also they added, this, random guy by the name of Anthony Duclair as well. Key subtractions for the New York Islanders: Robert Bortuzzo, Ken Appleby, Cal Clutterbuck, Matt Martin, Sebastian Aho, and that's it. To Tom's New York Rangers, certainly not my New York Rangers. Key additions here in Riley Smith, Sam Carrick, Casey Fitzgerald, and Adam Erne. And key subtractions in Alex Wenberg, Jack Rossovic, Eric Gustafson, Blake Wheeler, and Barclay Goudreau. Philadelphia Flyers. Key additions here: Matvey Michkov and Anthony Richard. And key subtractions in Cam Atkinson, Mark Stahl, Ryan Johansson, Victor Mete, Felix Sandstrom, and Dennis Gurianov. The Pittsburgh Penguins. Key additions: Cody Glass, Rutger McGrody, Mac Gazelic, yeesh, Blake Lizotte, Anthony Beauvillier, Kevin Hayes, Mac Hollowell, and Sebastian Aho, and sorry, Boca Mama also as well. And key subtractions: Jeff Carter, Riley Smith, Jordan Frasca, Radim Zahorna, and Maxime Kajkovic. Finally, the Washington Capitals key additions here: Pierre-Luc Dubois, Jacob Chitrin, Matt Roy, Andrew Mangiapane, Logan Thompson, Brandon Duhaime, Taylor Radish, and Jacob Vrana. And key subtractions in Darcy Kemper, Nick Jensen, Max Pacioretty, Matthew Phillips, Nicholas Aube-Kubel, and Lucas Johansson. So, lot to kind of take in there, but also not as much as previous division previews that we've done over the last few weeks, which if you're curious about the Pacific Division, Central Division, and Atlantic Division that we've already previewed, go back and look at those videos. Those are our most previous videos, so go and watch those before coming back to this. But let's get into our favorite offseason moves. So, Tom, let's start here with you. What were some of your favorite offseason moves by teams within the Metropolitan Division?
Well, I mean, the obvious one, and how can it not be, is what the Devils did. You upgraded the depth with Tatar and Nason. They've both been in New Jersey before. I guess that's Lou Lamoriello-esque. I don't know. You upgraded the D with Brendan Dillon and Brett Pesce, even though Brett Pesce's hurt. And you got the big fish in the pond, the big goalie fish, Jacob Markstrom. Now, all these moves on paper should be an improvement. They should be an improvement. Keyword here is on paper. I like what DC did as well, but will Dubois right the ship for them? Will he finally play up to that deal that he got for LA? He was not good for them last year. And everybody talks about Pierre-Luc Dubois being this next breakout candidate, and he never seems to live up to it. So let's see what Washington will do for him. And the same thing, I like that they got Jacob Chikrin, but didn't Pittsburgh try doing the same thing last year with their D? With Carlson, they brought Carlson in to already play with Letang, and now Washington's bringing in Chikrin to already play with John Carlson, who they already have. Other big elephant in the room here are the Philadelphia Flyers. They brought over their prize draft pick, Matvey Michkov. It could take them further after having a decent year last year, but not getting in the playoffs. We'll see what he does. Now, let's go across the state to Pittsburgh. Believe it or not, bringing in Kevin Hayes, I kind of like. Kevin Hayes, remember, was a Ranger. And I feel like the best hockey Kevin Hayes played was also on the Rangers, playing third-line center and playing on the second power play unit. You're bringing Kevin Hayes in to play where he played his best. So let's just see what he does in Pittsburgh. Maybe it'll help them out. Maybe it'll get them back into the playoffs. Will it get them back to the Stanley Cup? Absolutely not. Will it get them back into the playoffs? You never know. And, well, the homer alert here is the Rangers. I have been clamoring for Riley Smith for years. I think Riley Smith is better than anyone they had on that wing last year, whether it be Blake Wheeler, whether it be Jack Rossovic, whether it be Alex Wenberg, because they tried that, or whether it even be Jimmy Vesey. I've been clamoring for Riley Smith. Riley Smith's a solid top six guy, and Riley Smith turns it on when the playoffs come around. So I'm very, very happy they got Riley Smith.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you hit a lot of really good points there, Tom. The obligatory favorite move answer for me, being a Devils fan, has to be that I really liked what the New Jersey Devils did this offseason. It wasn't even just about adding the depth that they did, but also in who they subtracted this past season. I mean, you look at those key subtractions. John Marino, who was a key contributor to this past year, they understood that they were going to try to sign Brett Pesce after being a free agent from Carolina. So they moved John Marino for picks to Utah, which I thought was a really good move. They moved Kevin Ball in the Jacob Markstrom deal, which that's a sacrifice you need to make to try to improve as well. And they ended up picking up Brendan Dillon as well to replace him, which I think that is an instant upgrade on the left-hand side for them. Instant upgrade as well on the right-hand side with Brett Pesce once he's finally ready to go, which could be as early as opening night on Thursday night, as some are saying. Alexander Holtz, unfortunately, it never truly worked out with him in New Jersey. I hope for the best for him in Vegas. But the Devils also pick up a potential key top 9 guy in Paul Cotter. And I think he instantly goes into a young core of New Jersey Devils that I think Paul Cotter can be a part of this kind of core that you're building over the next few years. He's only 24 years old, so they have him under team control for a little while. So he's going to be an important piece. He's a grittier piece, but that was another thing that the Devils did. They got grittier overall. Brendan Dillon is a grittier guy. Picking up to play 7D, Jonathan Kovacevic is another kind of gritty piece. He's a guy who's 6'4", and can finish checks. That's a big move for the New Jersey Devils. Bringing back Stefan Nason in a new role is great as well. He's a guy that can play power play minutes. He's a guy that can also play in the top 9 or bottom 6 if you want to play him on the 4th line, can work out really well. Tomas Tatar is another guy who's a welcome 1-year deal for New Jersey Devils. Overall, the Devils reshaped the bottom 6. They reshape the defense, and you also pick up your starting goaltender that they've desperately needed for a while now in Jacob Markstrom. I know amongst Devils fans that he wasn't the most desired goaltender, but I think he's already making some fans in New Jersey after the global series in Prague that they just played in against the Buffalo Sabres. He was electric in that first game, and if it's any preview of what's to come for Jacob Markstrom as a Devil over the next 2 years, I think Devils fans should be plenty excited. Now, moving away from the New Jersey Devils here, I actually really like what the Rangers did, and I also like what the Philadelphia Flyers did. For the New York Rangers, adding Riley Smith was a very good move. The Rangers needed a contributor in the top 6 that can score and also set up plays, and Riley Smith is as good a player as you can get after missing out on Vladimir Tarasenko. And I actually think I like Riley Smith as a fit in New York more than I did Vladimir Tarasenko. And for the Philadelphia Flyers, managing to get Matvei Michkov out of his KHL deal early to join the Philadelphia Flyers now is a bigger move than a lot of people realize. I think that might be my favorite move of the offseason, bar none. If Matvei Michkov has a very good rookie season, I'm going to mark my words on this one. If Matvei Michkov has a very good rookie season, maybe even caps it off by winning the Calder Trophy, maybe amasses somewhere between 65 to 75 points in his rookie season. It is a tall order. If he does that, I think Philly could very well sneak into a playoff position this year. I think they could sneak it out of some of those 3 or 4 ranked teams right now in the Metropolitan Division, also with it being a little bit weaker. Honorable mentions here. I like what Columbus did to try to add to the depth. They're still a younger and growing team. They're going to be fun to watch. I like the recent addition of Kevin LeBanc also. I think that's going to be a great move for Columbus. And Washington, I like their moves a little bit better than the Penguins, but I'll get to the Penguins in just a little bit here. But let's get to who's better and who's worse. I mean, we talked a little bit about who's better right now, but Tom, I'll let you add on top of like who's better or worse, but who in your mind is probably worse right now for where?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious one in the room here is the Carolina Hurricanes. I mean, how can you say they're not worse? Jake Getzel, gone. Brady Shea, gone. Brett Pesce, gone. Teuvo Teravainen, gone. And the players that they replace them with aren't much better. And they're not better at all, to be honest with you. The only thing I could say about the Canes is this. Their D, and we'll look at it later, still looks halfway decent, and they are doing the best that they can to maybe stretch their top six a little bit, make their top six a little bit deeper. One of my qualms with the Canes last year in the playoffs, when we were reviewing them during the Rangers series, is that they were jamming their best players on the line one, and it's something I always said you should never do. They are trying to stretch that out a little bit with players like Svechnikov, Aho, and Nichas. And we will see how that goes this year, and we'll look at it in a few short minutes now when we go into the depth previews of each team, the line previews of each team using Daily Faceoff. That's the only thing I could say I like that Carolina's doing, but on paper and overall, they definitely got much, much worse. And I just think, and I said it last year with Tom Dundon, sitting there when he brought Getzel and Kuznetsov in, and they didn't have a good series against the Islanders, and they had that comeback, that little bit of comeback, that little bit of signs of life against the Rangers, only for Chris Kreider to take them apart by himself last year. I think Tom Dundon is finally telling them, you know what? Is finally telling their GM in the front office, I'm closing my checkbook. So it's your job to go out and draft players or bring players in on the cheap and show that this team can still be competitive. Because I opened my checkbook last year, and guess what? We didn't win in a year where a lot of people thought we were going to win.
Yeah, I'm not going to mention who's better here because the teams that I mentioned in my favorite moves, I think overall are better teams because of it. So I'll mention who's worse. And Tom, you hit the nail on the head before, but is this the year that we finally see a step back for the Carolina Hurricane? I think that this is honestly the year that we see it. I think Carolina is the modern day equivalent of the 2010s San Jose Sharks right now, where they were a team that got so close to Stanley Cup glory, was always a team in the conversation, was always a team in the mix for the Eastern Conference Final, always in the mix for a Stanley Cup, but just never could quite get over the hump. And I cannot say that this iteration of the Carolina Hurricane is better than last year or the year before. This is the first year that I can honestly say that. They still have a very good lineup. There's no doubt about it. We're going to see it on Daily Faceoff in a little bit. You still got Seth Jarvis, Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov, Martin Necas. You still have, important pieces on here. You still got Jacob Slavin. You still got Brent Burns. And you still have Freddie Anderson in between the pipes with Pyotr Kochetkov ready to take over for him. But is that really better on paper? I really don't think it is at this point. They didn't do enough to really fill a lot of those key roles, and I think we could see a step back for Carolina this year. Another team that I feel, even though I liked a few of their moves, they're just spinning the wheels, and that's the Pittsburgh Penguins. I hate to say it. I love Pittsburgh this year. I think they have a very balanced lineup. I think they're good, but they're one of the oldest teams in the league, and the age differential on this team is bad. And yes, I like the Rutger McGrody deal. I like the Kevin Hayes move. But Rutger McGrody at this point is going to end up being a building block for their eventual rebuild, which I think needs to happen sooner rather than later at this point. Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, they're not getting any younger. Erik Karlsson's not getting any younger. And it's getting to the point where I think something's going to boil over pretty soon in Pittsburgh, and we could be going to the basement sooner rather than later for Pittsburgh. I'm not saying that they can't possibly sneak into a playoff position this year, because any team that has Sidney Crosby has a chance at the playoffs and has a chance to go far. But I still got to feel like they're spinning the wheels and that they're kind of stuck in this purgatory at the moment. So time will tell for Pittsburgh if this is the year that they finally crack. And lastly, the New York Islanders. I mean, adding Anthony Duclair to an already decent offense is good, but I don't think they did enough to challenge the rest of the tri-state area against New Jersey, against the Rangers, against Philadelphia. All three teams who I felt like did more to improve this offseason than the New York Islanders did. So some real question marks for me there for a team that I still think can steal some games for sure. But it's one thing for us to talk about our favorite moves or who looks better on paper. Why not see for yourself? So we are going to take a look at these lineups brought to you by Daily Faceoff right now. It should be mentioned right now. Let me actually just adjust where we are. That way we can see better. There we go. So, one thing that should be mentioned is we are looking at the forward core, we're looking at the defensive core, we're not looking at the power play and the penalty kill. And we're going to skip past that to get to the goaltending. But if you want to look at this on your own, check it out, dailyfaceoff.com. Right now, this is projected for the start of the regular season, which just started today. Happy opening day in the NHL, by the way. But a few lineups look a little bit funky because of that, because of injuries that have already taken place. And we'll talk about that as we get to them. But we're going to start here with the Carolina Hurricane. I'll scroll as we go so that way it's easier to see. But starting here with the Carolina Hurricane, on the first line, Seth Jarvis, Sebastian Aho, and Jack Roslovic. On the second line, Andrei Svechnikov, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and Martin Necas. On the third line, Jordan Martinook, Jordan Stahl, and William Carrier. And on the fourth line, Brendan Lemieux, Jack Drury, and Eric Robinson. For the defense for the Carolina Hurricane, we've got Jacob Slavin and Brent Burns on the top pairing, Dmitry Orlov and Jalen Chatfield on the second pairing. And on the third pairing, we've got Shane Gossabert with Sean Walker. Going down to the goaltending here, we've got Freddie Anderson as your 1A and Pyotr Kochetkov as your 1B. It should be mentioned that Jesper Foss is out at the moment, and I think it's actually a lengthy time that he's going to be out. So I'm actually not quite up on what that injury is at the moment. Going down to our next team, the Columbus Blue Jackets here. Looking at the first line for the Columbus Blue Jackets, Yegor Chinikov, Sean Monahan, and Kirill Marchenko on the first line. On the second line, James Van Riemsdyk with Adam Fantilli and the recently added Kevin Labanc. On the third line, Mikhail Pythia, Cole Sillinger, and Kent Johnson. And on the fourth line, Zach Aston Reese with Sean Corrali and Matthew Oliver. Looking down at the defensive pairings for the Columbus Blue Jackets this year. On the first pairing, Zach Werenski with Ivan Provorov. On the second pairing, Jake Christensen with Damon Severson. And on the third pairing, Jack Johnson with Eric Gabranson. Going down to the goaltending for the Columbus Blue Jackets, we have Elvis Merzlikins as your 1A and Daniil Tarasov as your 1B. You've got a bunch of names there that are out at the moment. Justin Danforth, Eric Branson is day-to-day, but he should be good to go. Dmitry Voronkov, Boone Jenner, and Gavin Brindley are also out at the moment. Unsure about those injuries at the moment for them as well. Scrolling on down to our next team here, the New Jersey Devils. So, sorry, my New Jersey Devils, have to preface that. Now, there's a couple discrepancies with this lineup that I'll make sure I mention as well as we go. On the first line, we've got Timo Meier with Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt. On the second line, we've got Tomas Tatar with Nico Hischier and Dawson Mercer. On the third line, Paul Cotter with Eric Howla and Stefan Nason. And on the fourth line, Curtis McDermott with Curtis Lazar and Nathan Bastian. Should be mentioned that there's a glaring omission here, which is Andre Palat, who likely factors onto your first line or second line this year. Curtis McDermott is going to probably factor in as a healthy scratch most nights, but Andre Palat currently is out after the birth of his second child, so he likely will play on opening night, if I had to guess. Looking at the defense here for the New Jersey Devils, we've got Brendan Dillon with Dougie Hamilton on the first pairing. On the second pairing, Jonas Siegenthaler with Jonathan Kovacevic. And on the third pairing, the rookie, Seamus Casey with Simone Nemets. Going down to the goaltending for the New Jersey Devils, as your 1A, it's going to be Jacob Markstrom, not Jake Allen. And as your 1B, it's Jake Allen. Going to split some time more than likely. Currently out right now on injury is Luke Hughes and Brett Pesce. Both should be back sooner rather than later. Brett Pesce is likely going to be back first, and then Luke Hughes will probably follow that. Santeri Hataka is also out after being injured in preseason as well. He's going to be spending time on the IR, I believe, as well. So going on down from there to the New York Islanders. On the first line, Anthony Duclair with Bo Horvat and Matthew Barzal. Really like that top line, actually, just a side note. On the second line, we've got Maxine Saplakov, something like that. I'm probably going to learn to say it throughout the year, so you can roast me now for it. But he's with Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri. On the third line, Anders Lee with JG Pajot and Simone Holmstrom, or Simon Holmstrom rather. And on the fourth line, Casey Cizikas with Kyle McLean and Oliver Wallstrom. That fourth line just looks so different without Matt Martin and Cal Clutterbuck. That just feels wrong in so many ways. Looking at the defense here for the New York Islanders, we've got Alexander Romanov with Noah Dobson. On the second pairing, Adam Pelech and Ryan Pulock. And on the third pairing, Mike Riley with Scott Mayfield. Looking at the goaltending here for the New York Islanders, Ilya Sorokin probably factors in as your 1A, with Semyon Varlamov as your 1B. This might be the first team we've looked at during previews that has 0 injuries at the moment. This might be the first team that we've looked at this year that has 0 injuries. To the New York Rangers, sorry, Tom's New York Rangers, my bad. To the top line, Artemi Panarin with Vinny Trocheck and Alexi Lafreniere.
Mm-hmm.
On the second line, Chris Kreider with Mika Zibanejad and Riley Smith. On the third line, Will Cooley, Philip Hedl, and Capo Caco. And on the fourth line, Adam Enstrom, Sam Carrick, and Matt Rempe, or as I like to call him, the Rempire State Building. Looking at the defense here for the New York Rangers this year, we've got Keandre Miller with Adam Fox on the top pairing, Braden Schneider with Jacob Trouba on the second pairing, and on the third pairing, Zach Jones and Victor Mancini. Looking at the goaltending here for the New York Rangers, we've got Igor Shesterkin as your 1A and Jonathan Quick as your 1B. Should be noted that Ryan Lindgren and Jimmy Vesey are currently out on injury. Tom, I mentioned discrepancies with the New Jersey Devils lineup. Any discrepancies here with what factors in once injuries are cleared up?
I mean, the only thing I could see being different is when Ryan Lindgren comes back, he might slot back in next to Fox again. They may want to use Fox and Miller all year round as a permanent pair, and then you'll have to figure out what you do with Lindgren. Do you put him with Jones? Do you put him on the second pairing with either Trouba or Schneider? And the thing about Lindgren is, I hate to say it, he's a walking injury, and this kid, Victor Mancini, has really, really impressed in camp. On the fourth line, it's going to be interesting to see what happens as well. They want Adam Edstrom and Matt Rempe in there right now. Matt Rempe had an okay camp, an okay preseason. Edstrom really, really, really impressed me. And Edstrom, if he keeps us going into the season, he might be a force to be reckoned with, and that might be a player that nobody on any team might want to see. He's big, but he showed this season that he can skate, this preseason that he can skate and he can score goals. If he puts it all together this year, that might be a threat to any team lining up against the Rangers this year. And the one guy that's left out here as well, Jimmy Vesey, when he comes back, will probably slot in there. And then you're going to have Johnny Brodzinski in there as well. That might just be for a swap-in, swap-out thing. Sam Carrick is not Barclay Goodrow. I think they were going to do like a fourth-line swap with him and Carrick, with Brodzinski and Carrick regardless. So Brodzinski might get into some games on a fourth line as well. But other than that, it's all pretty much what it should be. You never know if somebody in the top 9 goes down. I think you'll definitely see Brennan Othman called up. But right now, this is basically the team you're going to see: sans Jimmy Vesey, Ryan Lindgren, and Johnny Brodzinski. And like I said, Brodzinski is going to be kind of in and out of the lineup as well.
You know, and I was about to mention that this might be the first year you haven't mentioned Brennan Othman, but yeah, just had to shoehorn him in at the end.
Well, you want to know what, though? You want to know what? He looked okay in camp, but this kid, Victor Mancini, I know he's the defenseman, he outdid him. And the fact of the matter is this, and it's not even for him, it's for Capo Caco as well. If Gabe Perreault goes out there for Boston College this year and has a hell of a year like he did last year, and he capitalizes on his year last year, if I were Brennan Othman and I were Capo Caco, I'd be real worried about that. Because if Perreault dazzles and he's up next year, one of them might be out of a job. That's not to say if Caco dazzles or Othman comes up and dazzles, and the fact of the matter is this: Riley Smith's only on a 1-year deal. Then you send Riley Smith walking in the summertime. But if Riley Smith shows this great chemistry with Zibanejad and Kreider, then that could lead to another problem, because they're going to keep Smith, but they're going to want to have Perreault playing NHL minutes. Perreault, I guarantee, he dazzles with BC this year. He'll be on the Wolfpack by the end of the season, and he'll be on the Rangers starting next year if he has a good year at BC this year, which I anticipate he will. I anticipate he will build on last year's season that he had.
All entirely possible. Let's keep moving along here. We'll look at the Philadelphia Flyers here. On the top line for the Philadelphia Flyers, we've got Matvei Michkov with Sean Couturier and Travis Konechny. On the second line, we've got Owen Tippett with Morgan Frost and Tyson Forster. On the third line, we've got Joel Farabee with Jet Luchanko and Bobby Brink. And on the fourth line, we've got Scott Lawton with Ryan Poehling and Garnett Hathaway. Really upset me last year that I had been pronouncing Ryan Poehling as Ryan Pooling, and how disappointed that it's not actually Ryan Pooling. So just quick little aside there. Looking at the defense here for the Philadelphia Flyers, we've got Cam York with Travis Sanheim on the top pairing. On the second pairing, we've got Nick Seeler with Jamie Drysdale. And on the third pairing, we've got Igor Zamula and Rasmus Ristolainen. Looking at the goaltending to start the year for the Philadelphia Flyers, we've got Samuel Ersson factoring in as your 1A and Ivan Fedotev as your 1B. Nick Seeler's been day-to-day. I think he should be ready for opening night. And there's the purgatory that is Ryan Ellis. He still exists, much to the chagrin of Philadelphia Flyers fans. I don't know when the day is that they're going to burn him on the stake, but it should be coming soon. So look for that in your inboxes. To the Pittsburgh Penguins here, we've got on the top line, we've got Drew O'Connor with Sidney Crosby and Anthony Beauvillier. On the second line, we've got Michael Bunting, Evgeny Malkin, and Ricard Raquel. On the third line, we've got Rutger McGrody with Lars Eller and Jesse Puljujarvi. And on the fourth line, we've got Kevin Hayes with Cody Glass and Nola Chari. Looking at the defensive pairing for the Pittsburgh Penguins this year, we've got Matt Grzelcyk with Chris Letang, Marcus Pettersson with Erik Karlsson on the second pairing. And on the third pairing, we've got Ryan Graves with Jack St. Ivany. My bad. Jack St. Ivany. Looking at the goaltending here for the Pittsburgh Penguins, we've got Tristan Jarry as your starting goaltender with Joel Blomqvist as your backup. And it should be mentioned right now that their normal backup, Alex Nedeljkovic, is currently on IR. Also currently on IR at the moment is Matt Nieto, Brian Rust, and Blake Lizotte. I'm actually unsure about those injuries as well. I'm not up on the current injuries in the NHL. I will likely do an injury catch-up next week just so that way we can all be updated on the injuries to start the year and open the season as well. Looking down at our final team here, though, the Washington Capitals. On the first line, Alex Ovechkin, Dylan Strome, and Andrew Mangiapane. On the second line, Connor McMichael, Pierre-Luc Dubois, and Tom Wilson. On the third line, Sonny Milano, Hendrix Lapierre, and Alexei Protas. And on the fourth line, Brandon Duhaime, Nick Dowd, and Taylor Radish. Looking at the defense for the Washington Capitals this year, we've got Jacob Chychrun with John Carlson. On the second pairing, Martin Fehervary and Matt Roy. And on the third pairing, Rasmus Sandin with Trevor Van Riemsdyk. And looking at the goaltending here for the Washington Capitals, we got Charlie Lindgren as your 1A and Logan Thompson as your 1B. TJ Oshie could very well miss this, the majority of the NHL season this year as he's been placed on IR. Nicholas Backstrom, it's entirely possible that his career is over at this point, so he might just be a permanent fixture on IR at the moment. It was actually announced today that Tom Wilson, in place of TJ Oshie, they were rotating alternate captains this year. Washington Capitals announced today that he will be the permanent alternate captain this year, that Tom Wilson's going to be the permanent alternate captain this year. So, yeah, looked at a lot there for the Metropolitan Division. They're really looking up and down these lineups. And like I said, if you're curious about any of the lineups that you saw, go check out dailyfaceoff.com. They really stay up to date by the minute. So give them some support, give them some love as well. But based on these projections, Tom, which lineups really look the strongest? Like, who on a given night are you worried about facing? And which ones look the weakest? And you should just pencil in a W.
Well, I can't worry about facing my own favorite team, right?
Probably not. They don't look that good. Same with the Devils. They don't look that good.
I mean, the Rangers in my eyes are still the strongest. I mentioned about Riley Smith earlier. better right wing option. I won't go over who he's better than last year. I already said it, so I won't say it again. Another big thing for the Rangers is this, and it's not what I mentioned earlier. It's not what I just mentioned when you asked me a few questions about him. It's on that third line center spot, Filipino. He can stay healthy this year, and he can have a similar year to the one he had 2 years ago. That's a solid 20 goals you're adding to the lineup right now. And in a year where you fully expect, I don't expect Panarin to get 123 points again or 49 goals. I figure Panarin, if he can get 95 to 100 points and score 30 goals, it's fine. Kreider generally is around 35 to 40. If he can do that again, great. Zibanejad, I'd like to see a little more out of him this year. I'd like to see him back around 30 goals and 80 points. And the biggest one here is Alexis Lafreniere. If he can build on last year and he could be about a 75 to 80 point guy, if Lafreniere can score 30 goals and pop 50 helpers, that would be big too. So right now, the Rangers in my eyes are still the strongest. But I'm going to give you the Devils. We know what they did. We know what they did. We know how they look on paper. My thing with the Devils is this. I think, and granted, they won their 2 games in Europe, but they also played the Buffalo Sabres, who, well, we've talked about them a lot. And, well, they're not the greatest team, but the Devils beat them twice, so it shows that they're better. They might have gone 1-1 last year, the year they had. So the Devils are depending a lot on Jacob Markstrom, who's had a great start. They're depending a lot on their D to get better. Their D has looked better. And they're depending on a new coach named Sheldon Keefe. So we'll see. But I don't know if depending on all three is going to translate into a Stanley Cup championship or a finals appearance like some people are thinking that will happen for them. I think they're a playoff team, but I don't know if they're a Stanley Cup team. Obviously, the lineup looks stronger. Now, here's my sleeper pick for the division, believe it or not, and this is a team that could make some noise if Carolina falters. I hate to say it. It's a team that I don't really like. Pittsburgh Penguins. I look up and down at the Penguins. You have a lot of players there. You still have Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin playing elite hockey at past age 35. You have a guy there like Kevin Hayes, and obviously now he's on the 4th line, but Kevin Hayes, if he can slot back in on the 3rd line and be that 3rd line center and a second unit power play specialist, can really help you. Lars Eller's still there as a solid player. Anthony Beauvillier, he's an unsung hero for a lot of teams as he's been on. He had a great year last year in the playoffs, and he was great for those Islanders teams that pushed Tampa Bay to the brink. You still have guys there like Brian Rust. And you still have on D, you still have Erik Karlsson, and you still have Chris Letang on D. I'm looking up at the D again. You have Matt Grzelcyk, who was solid for the Boston Bruins all those years, and you have Ryan Graves on your 3rd pair, who was also another solid defenseman in some of his other stops. The Pittsburgh Penguins might be a sleeper pick in this division this year if all goes right. But if you remember last year, we were talking about our playoff bubble team. Remember I said last year, I looked up and down the Penguins lineup last year, and I said, I don't know what's going on with this team because on paper, this team is too good to be missing the playoffs. But yet again, they missed the playoffs the last 2 years in a row. But I'd watch out for them. You never know. If they catch fire and a few other teams falter, they may find themselves playing April hockey this year and playing past game 82. They may have a game 83 this year. I don't know if they're going to recapture the glory days, but I kind of like what I see with them. I do. They could be a good sleeper pick.
Yeah, I mean, as a Devils fan, it's tough for me to admit this, but I'll be a non-biased hockey fan. The Rangers are the team to beat on paper in the Metropolitan Division this year, and it's not even just on paper, it's just given track record as well. This is a team that really has not lost really any pieces whatsoever and has only gained over the last 2 years as well. Sure, you can argue like, well, they lost, some rentals over the past, 2 years, and guys like Patrick Kane, Vladimir Tarasenko, Alex Wenberg, you can make that argument. However, the nuts and bolts of this team is still in place. And you also have one key cog in the machine that is probably the best in the entire NHL, and that's Igor Shesterkin. Mm-hmm. And there's some bumblings going on what's going on with that contract situation right now with Igor, and probably has some Rangers fans kind of twiddling their thumbs saying, well, what's going on? We kind of want to get this figured out. But until then, Rangers are still the strongest team on paper. But don't look now. The Devils are hot on their tails. And I'm not saying that this is a team, the New Jersey Devils, that are Stanley Cup contenders this year. I think more so that they're in the upper echelon of the Eastern Conference. And it wouldn't be out of least out of the realm of possibility that they could make it to the Eastern Conference Final this year, given their lineup. If they can stay healthy and under the tutelage of Sheldon Keefe, if they can really keep the offense going while getting a steadier defense and goaltending that they haven't had over the past few years, I think the Devils could be set up for success this year and maybe even more success over the next 2 years afterwards. This is a team that's going to be built to really stay at the top of the Metropolitan realistically over the next few years. So it's only up for the New Jersey Devils. Still got to watch out for proven teams such as the Pittsburgh Penguins, such as the Washington Capitals. You still can't sleep on the Carolina Hurricane as well. But mark my words, I think if Matvei Michkov can really play well this year, I think they can steal a playoff spot this year. I don't think that's completely unheard of at all. But let's go through where we think that the Metropolitan is going to project this year. Let's project who finishes first, who finishes eighth. Tom, let's start with you. 1 through 8, go.
All right. Well, number one, homer alert here. My favorite team, the Rangers. You brought up the Igor contract situation. It is a little bit of a black cloud on this team. You have the crowd saying, give him his $12.5 million. You have the other crowd saying, don't make the mistakes you made with Lundqvist. The only mistake they made with Lundqvist was the term, maybe. The deal was fair. The problem is they were giving money to guys like Dan Girardi and Mark Stoll who didn't deserve that money because they were broken down. It's going to be interesting to see here. And believe it or not, there's a rumor out there today saying that Igor didn't mind the money. It was the term he didn't like. He only wanted a 3 to 5 year deal. He didn't want an 8-year deal. I think a 3 to 5 year deal might not be the worst thing in the world for him. Do you really want to be paying a goalie that much money at 35 years old when you could draft another goalie low in the draft and bring him along? I don't know.
The rumored deal was 8 years, $11 million a year that he allegedly nixed. Allegedly.
I know, but apparently the reason he nixed it was not because of the money. It was the term. He didn't want 8 years. I think he wanted 5 years max, and that was it. Which I think actually he's doing the Rangers a favor by doing that, because that deal will be up when he's 35 years old, and then you're not hampered like they were hampered with Lundqvist. Remember, that Lundqvist deal was supposed to take them into 2020, 2021 before Lundqvist was eventually bought out, went to Washington, never played a game for them, and retired due to a heart condition. So, and a lot of people still blame Henrik Lundqvist for losses against Pittsburgh, losses against LA. I'm not going to get into it because it pisses me off how he gets blamed for that when it wasn't his fault, when they couldn't put a team in front of him because they screwed up a bunch of drafts. I'm going to leave that alone right now. I don't need to rant about that anymore. Second place, your New Jersey Devils. Like I said, I think they are depending on too many things to go right. But even if they don't go right, if one of the three things go right, if two of the three things go right, if all three things go right, I still think they're a playoff team. I don't know about a cup contender, but I do think they're a playoff team. Now, after this is where it gets interesting. The next couple teams I'm going to say can flip-flop. Right now, I'm actually going to give the Canes that third spot. Although they lost a lot of players, they still have a decent amount of the core of that team there. Now, the Canes, cup contenders anymore? Absolutely not. But if they play up to their standards and if they play Rod Brind'Amour hockey, I think they can be a playoff team. But that all depends. They can easily feel the losses this year too, and the back can start breaking in Carolina, and they can start taking steps back. We'll see. I think they're already taking a step back by not finishing 1 or 2, by finishing 3, and they could even take a step further back. Behind them in fourth, the New York Islanders. Now, the Islanders are another one too. Nobody expected them to do much last year. They slotted into that third spot last year in the Metro, gave the Canes a hell of a series, and they had Patrick Waugh behind the bench. Here's my caveat with Patrick Waugh, though. The same thing happened his first year coaching the Avs. Had a great year his first year. And then his second year, they crashed and burned. The Islanders could very well crash and burn this year. And I'm going to tell you this right now. The Metropolitan Division, the teams that go to the playoffs in the Metropolitan Division are going to be 1 through 3. So right now, I don't have the Islanders making the playoffs like they did last year. Number 4, the Pittsburgh Penguins. I said with the players they have and the depth they have and what they have, they could very well slot in that third spot. But I said the same thing last year about the Pens. I said I looked at this roster and I said that this team should be playing a lot better than what they were. The problem with them is it's the same thing. I think they rely on Crosby and Malkin too much. They're still elite players, even though they're over the age of 35. But they're going to need a lot of their depth guys and their role guys to step it up too if they want to be indeed a playoff team again. Sixth place. Philadelphia Flyers. They had a good year last year. They overachieved. They brought Mitchkov in this year. Mitchkov could be an Austin Matthews like he will Toronto the playoffs his first year. But right now, I can't guarantee that. Matvei Michkov's not Austin Matthews, so I'm giving Philly the 6th spot. 7th spot, Washington Capitals. Too old, too slow. Glory years are gone. They're done. Ovechkin last year against the Rangers, it said it all that he didn't have it anymore. Ovechkin can still score goals, but he's far from a top 5 or top 10 player anymore. So 7th place, Washington Capitals. 8th place, I hate to do it, but Columbus. They don't show me anything this year. They don't show me anything how they'll be better than a last place team.
Yeah, and it's tough to say when it comes to Columbus just because they are still a younger and growing team, and I think they can eventually be a really fun team to watch. Spoiler alert, I don't think it's this year. So going into my projections, Tom, I'm actually going to agree with you here. I'm going to say that the Rangers are going to finish in first place here. But I think it's going to go up until the last few days of the season where things kind of drop. I think the Rangers could be very well a contender for the President's Trophy this year as well. Battling it out for them for the President's Trophy this year, I think could very well be the New Jersey Devils. I think they're going to finish in second place, and I think it's going to be very neck and neck throughout the season for both teams. In third place here, I'm sticking my guns on this one. The Philadelphia Flyers. Don't sleep on them at all. I think it would be criminal to sleep on this team. That top line, I think, is deceptively good of Matvei Michkov, Sean Couturier, and Travis Konechny. I think that is a deceptively good line that I think can really tick off a lot of teams. In fourth place, I've got the Carolina Hurricanes stepping back. The only reason why I have the Canes finishing a little bit further back is because if Philadelphia does end up having a good season, I could see them pushing in and out of that spot. I could see scenarios where the Canes could finish in third or even second. I could see a scenario where the Devils finish in first. But this is just what my potential projection is right now. Looking at fifth place right now, I have the New York Islanders. Not a bad team on paper, and actually probably one of the best defensive cores on paper as well in the Metropolitan Division, but just not an overall exciting team. That top line is also probably one of my favorite top lines as well, with Anthony Duclair, Bo Horvat, and Matthew Barzal. But when you put all your eggs into one basket, I really worry for the rest of that offense. Looking at the sixth place team, I've got the Pittsburgh Penguins. I see a scenario where they can end up as high as fourth place, honestly. But I still see them taking a step back this year. In seventh place, I've got the Washington Capitals. Still not a bad team by any means on paper, but got to be wondering if this is kind of that purgatory time for them too. And in eighth place, I've got the Columbus Blue Jackets. Somebody's got to finish in eighth, and I think it's the Columbus Blue Jackets this year. I hope for their sake that they end up with a top 3 overall pick this upcoming year. I think that would be really sweet for them. I really hope that they end up with a number 1 overall pick, honestly, if they end up not doing as great as I think they could this year. I think that would be awesome if they could at least relish in that. But it's time for our question today to wrap up this video. This has been our longest division preview just because we're that passionate about the Devils and Rangers. But Tom, let's start here with you. Question today is the same from other division previews. Which team is the team to beat in the division this year?
Well, despite the controversy surrounding Igor, despite the controversy surrounding Jacob Trouba, it's still the Rangers. And I still think the Rangers could improve at the deadline. I know I mentioned a flip-flopping of Sam Carrick and Johnny Brodzinski. If the Rangers are far and away in first place at the deadline, or they're a solid playoff team, which I expect them to be, I would really like them to go after Yanni Gourde up in Seattle. But that's a conversation for another day.
Definitely a conversation for another day, and also just poaching from Seattle Kraken again. But, I'm going to be a homer here and say the New Jersey Devils. Why? Just to make some people mad, and I hope I do. Just saying, don't sleep on the Devils this year. But do you guys agree? Do you disagree? Let us know in the comments section down below. Who's the team to beat the Metropolitan Division? What are you looking forward to seeing most in the this year? And with that said, that's it for our division previews. We're going to be getting into regular season content next week. And so that way, you know, when that content goes live, make sure you subscribe down below, youtube.com/NHL on I-80 Sports. And while you're there, also subscribe, drop a like on the video if you like our content as well. If you're on Twitter, make sure you follow us down below at I80_sports NHL. And if you're currently subscribed to us or follow us on Twitter as well, thank you guys so much because we greatly value all of your support. But it's been a fun ride previewing the divisions this year in the NHL. We're coming back at you next week with our regular season content. Week 1 in the NHL, which amazing that we're already here. Happy opening night in the NHL. But until next week, I'm Brian. He's Tom. This has been our Metropolitan Division preview here at I-80 Sports.